How do you spell his last name?
It's Reimers, Matt Reimers. And if you want, it should just be Matthew.Reimers at csuob.edu. If you want to, after class, send me an email, and then I can contact him as well, and we'll see what's
Okay,
going on.
thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to PPA 535 Intergovernmental Relations. I think I've got the recording going, so we should be all set for this morning. I apologize in advance. I have COVID, and one of the symptoms I ended up getting is laryngitis. And so I can't really talk very well this morning, but I had a short session planned anyway where we'll just go over the course syllabus, talk about the course requirements, answer any questions you may have about the course, and just kind of get us going just this morning pretty briefly. And then we'll really get into our substantive information come Wednesday when we get into our first real substantive Zoom session. The Canvas site is open, so hopefully you've had a chance to go on there and take a look at the course and the syllabus. I apologize in advance if there are any typos or anything on the syllabus today. Again, I'm kind of dealing with COVID, so I'm a little bit out of it this morning, but we will do the best we can to muddle through. Um, Again, this is 535. It's one of my favorite classes. I really like 660 org theory. I also like 535 intergovernmental relations. And I like this course because it's a lot different than some of the other courses that you have had in the program up to this point in time. It's not a lecture-based course. Now, granted, on Wednesday in our first session, there will be some lecture component, and I will be talking to you about the development of federalism, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But for the most part, this course is run as very much of a graduate seminar, which means that we have a series of articles that we read throughout our term together, and then you will be leading the discussion. Every student will then select one of those articles and will then lead a discussion of that article. I will contribute to those discussions, especially at the end. So once you're done leading the discussion of your article, I will then come in and add some points. And so I won't be completely silent, obviously, but we're going to do it more as a graduate seminar as opposed to a lecture based kind of sage on the stage, as they say, type of a course. It is kind of unusual too because we have that winter break that is kind of breaking up our schedule a little bit. So we're starting here today. We are then ending on Saturday, January 27th. We have winter break that is scheduled from December 24th until January 7th. And so we've got that winter break that kind of breaks up the flow of the class a little bit, but it kind of is what it is because if we waited to do this class until January, then it gives you a huge break, and then we kind of push off some of your work in the spring. So it just made sense to continue the flow of the program and just accommodate winter break with that week off. Um, so in terms of our schedule, we're meeting today. We're scheduled to meet on Saturday, January 27th as our last session. I do want to note something for you though, is that we have a new cohort number 24, that has just been admitted to the program. They are going to start their classes in January, on January 27th. So I may have to move our session from 9 a.m. until noon to accommodate cohort 24 because they're brand new to the program. I don't want to kind of mess around with their starting time on their very first class session. You guys are veterans, and so you know the deal. And so I thought maybe if we do have to have that session on the 27th, we may start it at noon as opposed to 9. The session on the 27th is an as needed session, so we may not even need it. We'll see how we progress through our articles and our discussions. If we have some articles left that still need to be discussed, then we'll meet on the 27th. Otherwise, then we will just use that as a day off to kind of rest and recuperate a bit. Our Wednesday sessions then will be from December 6th through the January 24th, again with that 1 week off for winter break. As you know by now, we meet on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. So those are our class meetings. As I said, this is not really a lecture-based type of course. This is much more of a graduate seminar. And our whole purpose in this course is to talk about the relationship between national, state, and local governments, and especially to talk about that relationship in light of public administration and what this relationship between the three different levels of government will mean for, or does mean for, public administration. And if you look through the syllabus, you'll see that what we have done is we have organized the course around modules. And so we have 6 modules in the course. Our first couple modules are looking at the background and foundations of federalism and intergovernmental relations. We have a module on the political aspects of intergovernmental relations. We have a module on the fiscal aspects of intergovernmental relations. We have a module on the administrative aspects, and then we have a module on current and future issues of import to federalism and intergovernmental relations. And so try to design the course so that each week we have a different, distinct topic that we are covering, all with relevance to public administration. And throughout all those different modules, our primary goal will be to look at the nexus between federalism and public administration and see how federalism affects what we do as public administrators. Our course objectives, I've listed 6 of those there on the screen for you. I'll let you read through those on your own. Our textbook is this American Intergovernmental Relations by O'Toole and Christensen. It's a compilation of different articles in the field of American intergovernmental relations. And so when you are selecting your articles, either to do critiques on or to lead a discussion on, you'll be able to select articles from the O'Toole textbook, but then you'll also be able to select articles from the Canvas site as well. And you'll see on the Canvas site, I've added some additional readings. I think we have like 6 or 7 additional articles, because the articles in the O'Toole textbook, some of them, the kind of classic articles in intergovernmental relations, which means that some of them can be a little bit dated. And you'll notice some of them may be from, 2000 or 2005. And so a lot has happened in federalism since those articles were published. So those additional articles that we're going to be reading that I have on Canvas for you will update some of those discussions for more contemporary issues. And you'll see that, one of them, the Governors in Control article, really looked at the expanded power of governors, especially in the wake of COVID-19. You'll see that we've got articles about the federalism approach to to Obamacare, to the ACA, what federalism means in terms of voting rights, and how the Supreme Court has recently changed Voting Rights Act and the implications of that for state versus federal rights. And so we kind of update those types of things with those articles. So you've got the O'Toole textbook, plus you also have those additional readings that I have on our Canvas site. Another good source for you in this class is a journal called Publius, the Journal of Federalism. And I don't know if you've used Publius before, but for every field and every subfield, there's kind of like, there's one mainline journal. In public administration, the top journal is Public Administration Review, PAR. In the field of federalism, the top journal is this journal, Publius, the Journal of Federalism. And Publius is published 4 times per year. It contains articles. It's a peer-reviewed, high-quality journal. I believe it's still published out of the University of Oxford, which is kind of unusual that it's about American federalism, but it's published by Oxford University. But it contains articles about a variety of different topics that have relevance to federalism. And it is by far the best resource when you are working on your article critiques and you need to pull in some outside research. Publius, the Journal of Federalism, is probably going to be your go-to. And another very great thing about the Publius Journal is that every year they publish what they call the State of American Federalism. And it's an article that looks at important issues in federalism over the past year. And so I've got a couple of those articles in our additional readings on the Canvas site. The newest one has just come out, and so I'll try and get my hands on that and add that to our Canvas site as well. but it's a really good additional resource for you in addition to the O'Toole textbook and the articles that we have linked there on our Canvas site. Another important resource, the Federalist Papers. And you've probably, undergraduate political science courses, you've probably read the Federalist Papers, or at least a selection of the Federalist Papers before. As we know, the Federalist Papers are written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. And the purpose of the Federalist Papers was to try and sell the new Constitution to anti-Federalists and the citizens of New York. As we'll talk about on Wednesday, once the Constitution was adopted by the Constitutional Convention delegates, it was ratified relatively quickly by 10 out of 13. And then at that time, it had then become 14 because of Vermont, but it had been ratified relatively quickly by 10 states. But one of the states that was holding out was the state of New York. And so Hamilton, Madison, and Jay got together to write these Federalist Papers in order to try and convince the citizens of New York to support this new Constitution. So it's always a good resource for us to kind of get some insight into the thinking of the framers in terms of what they meant by our system of American federalism and what the Constitution really says and does not say about federalism and the relationship between national and state governments. So it's a good resource. We have some of those Federalist Papers assigned in this class. The two we're really focusing on Federalist number 10 and Federalist number 39. A lot of you have probably seen the musical Hamilton, and so you know that Hamilton really bore most of the burden in terms of writing these Federalist Papers. There are 85 Federalist Papers. John Jay got sick relatively soon after writing 5 papers and stopped, and so he only wrote 5 papers. I believe, if I want to say, it's like something like 59 were written by Hamilton, and then the remainder written by Madison. I do also want to mention to you that those Federalist Papers were written in support of the Constitution, but there are another set of papers called the Anti-Federalist Papers that were written in opposition to the Constitution. Now, we don't talk a lot about the Anti-Federalist Papers because kind of to the victor go the spoils. And so the Federalists won, they got the Constitution ratified, the Anti-Federalists lost. And so we don't really talk a lot about the Anti-Federalist Papers and have kind of drifted off into obscurity. But if you are interested, I'll have a link on our Canvas site to the Anti-Federalist Papers that if you're really interested, you can read some of those and kind of see the counterbalance of the Anti-Federalist Papers to the arguments being made by Hamilton, Madison, and Jay in the Federalist Papers. But oftentimes we talk about, well, we don't know what the framers meant. You know, they wrote these documents over 200 years ago. How do we know what they meant by these terms that they were using? Well, one of the good ways to know is to go and look at the Federalist Papers, because in some of those Federalist Papers, Hamilton and Madison actually tell us exactly what they were thinking and exactly what they meant by some of the phrases and passages that they included in the Constitution. And then if federalism is new to you and you want a little refresher on federalism, any basic American government textbook will have one chapter on federalism. And so if you have an old American government textbook kicking around somewhere at your house, feel free to take a look at that federalism chapter, and that would be a good little primer on American federalism if you need it. Okay, our course requirements. What are we going to be doing this term? You know, we have a 6-week term together, and so we have very limited time. We can only do so many readings, we can only cover so many topics, and we can only have so many assignments. I don't want to inundate you with a lot of assignments, as we've talked about in classes we've had together before. I understand that this is not the only thing that you are doing. I understand that you have a full-time job. I understand you have family obligations. And so I kind of want to limit the assignments so that they're doable. I'm very much, as you know, interested in quality over quantity. And so I figure if we limit the number of assignments, then we can get a higher quality product out of those assignments. So we have 4 categories of assignments in this course. You'll be doing 2 article critiques. The article critiques will be done on articles either from the O'Toole textbook or articles that I've provided for you on our Canvas site. And I'll talk a little bit more about the article critiques in a second, but the purpose of the article critiques is to afford you the opportunity to critically analyze the arguments made by the authors of the article. So in this article critique, we're looking at something that's relatively brief. Usually they're about 5 to 7 pages, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on the article, but typically about 5 to 7 pages. And there are 3 parts to the article critique, which we'll talk about in a second, but just briefly now, the first part of the critique will be a description of the article. This is the part of the critique that I am arguably least interested in because you've read the article. I've read the article multiple times. Your classmates have read the article. So we all kind of know what the article is about, but just give us a brief description of this is what the author's argument is. This is what the article is about. Then the second part of the critique is something that I'm really interested in. That's your critical analysis of the arguments made by the author. So did the author leave out some points? Did the author omit some important information that could have changed their conclusion? This is where you want to consider maybe updating the author's argument. So if it's an article from 2005, that was 18 years ago, so a lot of things have happened in the past 18 years. So are there Supreme Court cases or are there things that have occurred over the past 18 years that could change the conclusions of the author? So feel free to update the author's argument here in the second part, the critical analysis part. Then the third part of the critique, you will be linking the article to public administration and intergovernmental relations. So what does it mean for the balance of power between different levels of government, especially in terms of public administration? So those are the 3 parts that you'll be including in the article critiques. Again, they're 5 to 7 pages, so relatively brief types of critiques. Do make sure to use outside research. And so I'm asking for just a handful, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 outside resources that can really help support the argument that you are making in your article critique. And as always, you're used to this by now, but use APA formatting, 7th edition. So I won't ding you in terms of points if you mess up some APA formatting, but do make sure that your citations adhere to APA format. Assail, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Powell. Would these essays be double spaced as well?
Yes, please. Yeah, please double
Thank you.
space. Yeah, good point. So you've got 2 of those article critiques. The important thing to remember in terms of due dates for these article critiques is I'm asking that you submit your article critique before we discuss that article in class. And so there are no necessarily set due dates here. It will depend upon which article you select. So take a look at our course outline and our course schedule and just make sure you've got that critique done before that article is being discussed in class. And the reason why I ask that is I really want your critique to reflect your reading of the article and not necessarily being influenced by any of the topics that we discuss in class on that evening. So make sure you get them done before we discuss them in class. So you've got 2 of those, 2 article critiques. Each of those worth 100 points. Do, as always, make sure to proofread them. As you know, I'll go through and I try not to line edit anymore. I've kind of gotten over that as I've gotten older, but I will go through and note any grammatical issues and things like that. So make sure you proofread them very well. And then you'll have a discussion leader assignment. And the discussion leader assignment, you'll be selecting one article. Again, it'll be either from the O'Toole textbook or one of the articles that I've provided for you on our Canvas site. I have that article sign-up sheet you've probably seen under our announcements. I just put a brand new version of that up on the website, on the Canvas site, just about half an hour ago. Some of the articles have already been selected, but look through that spreadsheet, look at when those articles are being discussed, look at the articles, see which articles you might be interested in leading a discussion on, and then please do send me an email listing your top 5 choices of articles you would like to lead a discussion on. And then I'll try my best to accommodate your top choice. If that top choice is selected, then I'll move down to number 2. If that's selected, I'll move down to number 3. But I'll do my best to give you an article that you are requesting in that email. But it's all done on a first come, first served basis. Excuse me. And so do make sure to get your email in as soon as possible. As I said, we've already had 4 articles that have been selected, and so they're kind of going relatively quickly. The discussion leader assignment, what you'll do is it's not a presentation, it is leading a discussion. If you would like to use PowerPoint slides in order to organize your discussion, you are welcome to do so. You are not required to use PowerPoint slides because this is a discussion leader assignment. Your ability to lead the discussion will be evaluated essentially upon your ability to engage your classmates. And so as you put together your discussion leader approach, you'll think about putting together some questions that you want to ask the class to try and engage them and get everyone involved in a discussion of the article. I always recommend that as you prepare for this discussion leader assignment, put together more questions than you think you are going to need, because one of the worst things that can happen is you put together 5 questions you're going to ask the class and you burn through those 5 questions in 5 minutes. And then you're sitting there thinking, now where do I go and now what do I do? These discussion leader assignments, typically the discussions will last around 20 or 30 minutes, something like that. So they are robust types of discussions. And so make sure to put together enough questions so that you can make the discussion last longer than about 5 or 10 minutes. I will evaluate your discussion leader assignment based upon your ability to engage your classmates, your ability to get people interested in participating in the discussion of the article. Usually that's not a problem because everyone has to do this discussion leader assignment. And so there's kind of that quid pro quo that I'll participate in your discussion if you'll participate in my discussion. And so we tend to have some pretty good, pretty robust discussions with this type of an assignment. So that's your discussion leader assignment, also worth 100 points. But again, I reiterate, please send me an email with your top 5 choices of articles to lead a discussion on as soon as possible, as I just assign the articles on a first come, first serve type of basis. Kim, go ahead.
Hi, Professor. So I just want to make sure I have it right. So we're going to send you our 5 choices, and then we're doing 2 different article critiques. And then are we having 2 different discussions, one discussion on each of those articles?
No, your article critiques, I don't need to know what articles you're using for your critiques. I mean, because we can have multiple people write the same critique on the same, write a critique on the same article. So I don't need to know those in advance. The one I need to know is the article that you're going to lead a discussion on, because obviously we can't have multiple people discussing the same article. So
Got it.
so those top 5 should be, those are the ones that I am willing to lead a discussion on in class.
Okay.
Any other good question? Any other questions about the discussion leader assignment? Okay. Then next we have our Canvas postings, and you all are very familiar with this. You've been doing this hopefully in all of your courses in the program. So we have a total of 5 graded Canvas postings in this class. There's a total of 6 Canvas postings that you can do. 5 of them will be graded. So essentially, if you do the first 5 and you're happy with your grades on those first 5, you don't have to do number 6. If, however, you're not happy with one of your grades on the first 5, you can do Canvas posting number 6, and then I will replace your lowest grade with the grade on that Canvas posting. So you only have to do 5, but if you want to replace the grade, you can do 6, and we can always do that. So you've got those Canvas postings. What I'm asking you to do in the Canvas postings is to not only respond to my initial prompt, but then also to respond to 2 of your classmates. And so each Canvas posting will be worth a total of 20 points, 10 points for your initial response to my prompt, and then 5 points for each of your responses to classmates. You know me by now, and so my expectations for the Canvas postings is that they are very parsimonious. that they're very concise. Usually for your initial response to my prompt, 2-3 paragraphs will certainly be good enough to get the job done. In terms of a response to a classmate, 1 paragraph will certainly be sufficient for each of those 2 responses. So very parsimonious, very concise, but do make sure that you have proofread your responses, that they make sense, that they don't have a lot of typographical errors. And just like you in our 660 class, people tend to do very well on the Canvas postings. And so they do introduce a little bit of grade inflation, but that doesn't mean anything at all to me. So I'm fine with that. I just think that it's important that we have this connection each week through Canvas. That's kind of the asynchronous portion of our class. These courses need to abide by Carnegie hour requirements, and I probably have mentioned that to you earlier on in the program, but Carnegie hour requirements, there needs to be 45 hours of instructor-led contact in any course, whether it's distance learning or stateside. We accomplished that through our Saturday and Wednesday sessions, as well as through these Canvas posts. And then the remaining hours are not instructor-led, and so that's all your reading and preparing assignments and all that good stuff. So you also know our grading scale. We don't have pluses and minuses, unfortunately, and so it's just your 90, 80, 70, 60 type of split. Honestly, if you do all the work in the course and you lead a good discussion and you do a good job on your article critiques, it's going to be really hard for you not to get a B in the course. That's just kind of the way in which the course is designed. Okay, moving along. I'm still alive, so let's go through our course outline and our schedule, what we're going to be covering and when we'll be covering it. So as I said, I've divided the course up into modules, and we essentially have 6 different modules. We're starting module 1 today. We'll have our first Zoom session on Wednesday, December 6th. And for that Zoom session, our topic will be background and foundations, especially the constitutional basis, excuse me, of American federalism. So your 2 primary readings that you have 4 readings. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, but the 2 primary readings that we definitely will get to on Wednesday, Articles of Confederation and the U.S. Constitution. What we will do on Wednesday is I have some information to present you with in the first half of class, where we'll discuss where federalism came from, the constitutional basis and underpinnings of our system of federalism. We'll talk about the development of federalism, and I'll do that in the first half of class, and then we'll take a break. And then the second half of class, we'll get into the Constitution, and we will go through the Constitution. I don't know how many opportunities you've had to go through the Constitution. We now do that in the PPA 500 course, but I think it's important that we go through the Constitution and talk about the different elements of the Constitution and what those different elements of the Constitution mean then for American federalism. Then you have your first discussion board posting that is due on December 12th. And the way in which we're doing our Canvas board posts is that they will be due the day before our synchronous sessions, or synchronous sessions on Wednesdays. So they will then be due by Tuesday, the day before. So you got that first, and I'll show you what that one looks like in just a second. Then week 2 on December 13th, we'll continue this discussion of background and foundations. We'll get into the Federalist Papers, Federalist Paper number 10 and Federalist Paper 39. We'll then get in some articles from the O'Toole textbook, Morton Grodson's Federal System, where he talks to us about whether or not there ever was a system of dual federalism. D.L. Wright's article on the models of national, state, and local relationships, where he presents to us 3 different theoretical models of federalism, and then talks about when those different theoretical models occurred and how the balance of power really differs depending upon which of those 3 different models we are looking at. And then Martha Durthick article on the paradox of the middle tier, where Durthick talks about state governments in this kind of purgatory. They're kind of in this middle level, stuck between national and local levels of government. and how you would think state governments, because they were the first government, would have the power, but in fact, they have many limitations that are imposed upon them by becoming part of this middle tier of our intergovernmental system. Your other readings, you've got the remaining Federalist Papers. We're not going to specifically go through all the Federalist Papers. We're just going to pull out and focus on 10 and 39 primarily. And then you also have your second discussion board post as well. Then module number 3, we'll get into the political aspects of federalism. And one of the themes of this course you'll see over the next 6 weeks is that all things are not necessarily political, but a lot of federalism comes down to politics. And there are very heavy political elements that run throughout our entire intergovernmental system. And so we'll talk about some of those political aspects. The Camissa article, looking at governments as interest groups and how governments lobby Congress for redress of their grievances, and some of the differences between a public interest group and a more traditional interest group. The Ann Ohm Bowman article, Trends and Issues in Intergovernmental Interstate Cooperation. She looks at different approaches to how states can cooperate with each other, and oftentimes cooperate to try and push back on federal influence and federal domination. Martha Durthick, again, another article by Martha, Ways of Achieving Federal Objectives, where she talks a lot about how national government basically can grease the skids in terms of easy implementation of federal programs, and how it can kind of co-opt state governments into achieving national objectives and some of the strategies the national government uses to do so. And the DeWitt Beyond Preemption article, talking about preemption and talking about some of the ways the federal government can influence state governments through mandates and preemption. Then you got your third discussion board post. Then we go on winter break from the 24th until January 7th. And then we come back on January 10th and we shift into my favorite topic, which is fiscal federalism. And in fiscal federalism, we'll talk about how the relationship between national, state, and local governments has really become defined by money, and how money really defines how the different levels of government interact with each other. The George Brake article, which provides us with a good typology, if you will, of different types of grants, and lays out, formula grants versus project grants and categorical grants versus block grants. And it's a really good way of kind of framing our understanding of the use of federal grants and aid. Philip Moneypenny, and yes, that's his actual name, Moneypenny, and he looks at federal grants and aid and kind of gives us a reason why federal grants and aid are so popular in our intergovernmental system. Article by Alberta Spraja, Entrepreneurial Cities. This is a pretty in-depth and layered article that looks at how local governments have invested a lot of time and effort in trying to circumvent national limitations on their ability, and state limitations on the ability of local governments to borrow money. US ACIR. ACIR stands for the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. It's an organization we will talk about several times in this course, understanding that is no longer in existence. It went out of existence in 1996, but it really provided a wealth of research on issues of intergovernmental relations. In this article, ACIR asks the question of why do we have categorical grants, and then provides us with a pretty compelling explanation for why we see so many categorical grants. And the Bernori article, Financing Local Government in a Changing World, basically looking at things like globalization and how that has affected the way in which we do finances in our intergovernmental settings. And then the Nivola article, 10th Commandments, again, looking at some of the changes in the way in which the national government relates with state and local governments in terms of money. Then you have your fourth discussion board assignment. Then module 5, administrative aspects of federalism. Again, an ACIR article, Techniques of Intergovernmental Relations, looking at different types of mandates, their advantages, their disadvantages. Article by Paul Posner, The Politics of Unfunded Mandates, talking about why we have unfunded and partially funded mandates and their impacts. The Agranoff article that says we really need to start looking at negotiation and bargaining in the relationship between different levels of government. Some of those hidden negotiations and those hidden bargaining tactics have a big impact upon intergovernmental relations. It's kind of a hidden world that we don't look at very frequently. And then O'Toole in his article on American intergovernmental relations. Then you have discussion board number 5 that is due. And then we move into our sixth and final module. On the 24th, we'll get into the future of intergovernmental relations. You have some articles out of O'Toole again. Don Kettle's article on Homeland Security. Frank Thompson's article on federalism by waiver. Medical marijuana article, which is a good one that we can update because a lot of things have happened since the publication of that article in that topic. Jonathan Walters, his intergovernmental relations article. And then we also have several articles then on Canvas as well that you can select from for either your article critique or to lead a discussion on some more current topics such as governors in control, the expanding power of governors and why governors saw such an expansion in their power over the past few years. The voting rights article, federalism and the ACA, fiscal federalism and economic crisis. So several of those articles that are on our Canvas site are fair game then for that final module as well. As I said, our final session on the 27th will be an as needed session. So if we don't get through all of our article discussions by then we'll finish up those article discussions on January 27th. And then your final discussion board is due. So for your discussion boards, your Canvas discussions, those are the due dates. Number 1 is due on December 12th, 2 is due on December 19th, 3 is due on January 9th, 4 is due on January 16th, 5 is due on January 23rd. And if you choose to do the 6th one, which is optional, that one is due on the 27th. The rest of the syllabus is probably familiar to you because it's kind of the same types of disclaimers I have on all my syllabi and you saw in our 660 course. Let me just go through some more specifics on the grading for the different assignments. So for these 2 article critiques that you will be doing, you'll be selecting the articles for these critiques either out of the O'Toole textbook or from the Canvas site. I don't need to know what these articles are in advance because multiple people can do critiques on the same article. But the article critique, as we said before, will consist of 3 different parts. The first part is a brief description of the article where you'll be answering questions such as what's the author's argument, what are the main points made by the author. The second part is what I'm most interested in. It's a critique, which would be an original analysis of the author's arguments. This is the major portion of the critique that I'm most interested in. You'll be answering questions such as how valid is the author's argument? So really critique the author's argument. Were there any major considerations that were omitted by the author? This is where you can update the article. And so if there are some things that happened since article publication, you want to bring that to bear on your discussion there in the second part of the critique. Then the third part of the critique, you're going to be relating the article to intergovernmental relations and public administration. So there are any specific lessons the article teaches us for public administration, any aspects of your job or your organization that can be aided by the theories and arguments presented in the article. This is kind of the so what question. You know, my favorite question is so what? My favorite answer is it depends. This is kind of your so what. Okay, so the author made these arguments, well, so what? What does that then mean for our understanding of either intergovernmental relations and or the field of public administration? Is there anything from this article that you can pull with you and take with you to help you in your job or in your organization? So that's kind of that, finding that nexus between theory and practice. Each critique is worth 100 points. Each of those 3 parts worth 30 points, then a 10-point quality of writing component. So make sure to thoroughly proofread the critique before submitting it. I am asking that you do use some outside resources. Again, just a handful, 2, 3, 4, but make sure they're high quality outside resources from peer-reviewed journals like Publius or journals such as that. And then make sure that you cite everything appropriately using APA 7th And the article critiques then, as we said before, are due before we are scheduled to discuss the article in class. So we've got 2 of those article critique assignments. Then for your discussion assignment, again, this is something that, again, you'll send me that email with your 5 top choices, and then I'll assign an article to you that you will lead a discussion on. I know here I say most discussions last 30 to 45 minutes. That's kind of aspirational. In reality, they tend to usually last about 20 to 30 minutes in reality. So the whole idea of this classroom discussion leader assignment is to afford you the opportunity to lead a discussion and to engage an audience. As you know, we just received our another 7-year accreditation from NASPA, so we are now accredited through 2030. And one of the universal required competencies is the ability to interact and communicate productively with a diverse workforce and citizenry. And so this is one of the ways in which we evaluate that. Courtney, please go ahead.
It's Travis. Sorry, my wife signs in on my
Okay.
computer.
Oh yeah, I'm also saying Courtney. Wait a second.
For the discussion leader, are we summarizing the article? Or are we assuming that everybody's read the article and just simply asking questions?
That's a good question. I think it's good to summarize it because there are a lot of articles in the class. And so it's good to summarize it in the beginning just to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page with the article. And then you can go into your question. So there's nothing wrong with a summary in the beginning.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, absolutely. So that's your discussion leader assignment. Some people love the assignment, some people hate the assignment, and I understand that. You know, when I was in grad school, I hated discussion leader assignments, but that's pretty much all that I had because I attended a program that was a relatively small program, and so I had an urban politics class, for example, where it was I sat on one side of the table, the professor sat at the head of the table, and there was another student who sat across from me, and that was it. That was the entire enrollment in the class. And every week we had to read 2 books in urban politics. And half the class I would then spend leading a discussion with the other person on the book I read. I was in charge of reading, and then he would lead a discussion on his book. And so that's our entire class was just doing these types of discussions. And it's very difficult to keep a discussion going with one other person. At least you have multiple colleagues who can participate in your discussion. But again, as you're doing your discussion, think about things such as being familiar with the article. Obviously, well, I won't say obviously, I'll say fingers crossed. Hopefully, everyone's read the article in advance. And so we're all somewhat familiar with it. You need to be more familiar with it than anybody else in the class. And so be very familiar with your article. You're going to have to read through it multiple times. As I said, prepare several questions in advance to ask the class. Prepare more questions than you think you will need because you will go through your questions much quicker than you ever imagined when you're putting the questions together. This next one is tough. Be flexible in using follow-up questions that flow from the discussion. You really want this discussion to kind of flow organically. And so feel free to use follow-up questions. Hopefully people will be able to bring to bear some of their experiences from their job or from their organization. And then you can follow up on that. And then, sometimes it'll take the discussion in a little bit different direction. One of the, I guess, really the art of leading a discussion is knowing how to take the discussion down different avenues without going too far into a rabbit hole. And so you don't want to end up digressing into something completely unrelated, but you do want to allow that discussion to kind of flow organically. And I think the toughest one is number 5 there, a piece of advice. Give time for people to answer a question before answering the question for them. This is tough. You ask a question of an audience and then you hear crickets and no one's answering your question. That puts a lot of pressure on you and you start to feel uncomfortable and maybe I asked the wrong question or maybe I don't understand the article as well as I thought I understood the article. But give time for people to think about your question and be able to respond to it. You might want to rephrase your question a couple of different ways because by rephrasing it, then it might make sense to someone and then they will be able to answer it. these questions are questions that you've written out and you have thought about. And so you kind of know the answers you want to get with these questions, but your colleagues are hearing these questions for the first time. So you got to kind of give them a beat to think about the question and formulate an answer. And that can be tough to do because it can kind of feel uncomfortable. Those, 5 or 6 seconds of silence can feel like 5 or 6 hours. And so you kind of want to understand that may happen and then rephrase the question and maybe you'll get the answer that you're hoping to get. It's not really a presentation, so I don't really grade on quality of visual aids or anything like that. You don't have to worry about doing that. I am really grading this based upon the quality of the discussion. So if you want to use PowerPoint slides, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine as well. You won't lose any points by not using them. I just want to see you engage your classmates in the discussion. Ooh, okay, Canvas postings, I've already talked about those, 20 points each, 10 points for your initial post, and then 5 points for the responses to each of your classmates. As I said before, there are 6 posts, 5 of them are graded, and so the 6th one is optional, and I will then replace your lowest grade with the highest grade you get. So, but for the most part, people oftentimes, they're happy with their first 5 grades, and they don't need to do Canvas essay number 6. Just there in case you need it or want it. And then all of our disclaimers here, you can read through all those on your own. I will highlight this last one though, changes to the syllabus. We may need to make some changes to our schedule as we proceed, depending upon how quickly we cover information. So there may be some discussions that are relatively short. And if so, then we may need to work ahead a little bit, but I'll let you know if we're going to work ahead and give you at least a week's advance notice if we're going to, move some articles around in our schedule. But we're going to remain flexible because you never know how these discussions flow and how long these discussions may take. So that is the syllabus. Are there any other questions on the syllabus or any of the course requirements or anything like that? Okay. If not, then let me stop that share. And let me go ahead and share out our sign-up sheet. As I said, I just added a new version of the sign-up sheet to our Canvas site just before we stepped into class today. So added some articles that have already been selected, but this is what I'm thinking in terms of the flow of our articles. I'm sorry, Balin, go ahead.
If we message you, like how soon after can we expect a response on a confirmation on what article we're going to be presenting on?
Yeah, you'll get an immediate confirmation. So just email it to me because I like to have that because I'm doing first come, first serve. So I like to have the time and date stamp on the email. So I know that I'm giving people articles as they ask for them, but I'll respond immediately and say, I gave you this article. So you'll know right away.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure. So you'll see here are the readings that we have scheduled for this term. As I said on Wednesday, Articles, Confederation, and Constitution. I will handle those because that's kind of getting us started with our discussions. So I will take care of those so you don't have to worry about anyone needing to sign up for those. Then on the 13th, we'll do our Federalist Papers. The 2 we're focusing on 39 and 10. Melissa has signed up for 39 already. So 10 is still available. We'll do the Grodzins article, the Wright article, and the Durthick article. So all those are still available if you're interested on December 13th. December 20th is when we get into the political aspects of federalism. And so we've got those 4 articles. That's a day that we may or may not pull in additional articles. I'm kind of hesitant to do it because we're kind of right up on that winter break. So I don't want to get into fiscal federalism and start talking about that before we step away on break for a week. So we'll probably just do those 4 articles on the political aspects of federalism. Then we've got a break. And then January 10th, you'll see the fiscal federalism articles we have assigned. Then in January 17th, we'll get into the administrative aspects of our article, our administrative aspects of federalism articles. And then the 24th, we'll get into what I consider to be kind of our more current and future issues of intergovernmental relations. So see the ones that are taken so far. Federalist 39, Melissa has that one. Cynthia has the Beyond Preemption DeWitt article. That one's already taken. Another one that's already taken is medical marijuana. That's Reggie's article. And Sale has the voting reform article. So those 4 articles are off the table, but all the other articles are fair game. So send me an email, give me your top 5, and then I will assign the highest rated one that you've given me to you for leading a discussion. And as I update the spreadsheet, I'm sure a lot of requests are going to come rolling in today. So as I update the spreadsheet, I will put the updated version up on our Canvas site under announcements. And so I will try and keep it as current as possible. Now, let me share out our Canvas site, if I can find it. Okay, I'm going to have to share my screen because apparently it's not here. So let me go and share our Canvas site. Hopefully I'm still logged in. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the Canvas site. Let me put it in student view. Okay. So again, under the announcement article sign up, that's where I'll have the new and revised versions of the spreadsheet. I'll be uploading onto there. As you already know, here under our announcement, the welcome announcement, I have all of our links for each one of our sessions. So we're using, again, a recurring link for our Wednesday sessions. And so that will be our recurring link for our Wednesday sessions. The syllabus is available. Modules. Here we go. All right. So again, I've divided this course up into 6 different modules. I have a listing of readings for each of the modules. And then again, for Wednesday, there's your link for the Articles of Confederation. There's your link for the Constitution. And there's your link for the PowerPoint slides that I'll be using in our discussion of the development of federalism in the first half of class on Wednesday. And then to do your first discussion board posting, here's your link. So let's take a look at that one. This is a pretty simple, straightforward one. Given your reading of the U.S. Constitution, discuss the proper roles of federal and state governments, which level of government should be dominant, provide evidence from the Constitution to support your opinion. So we'll talk about the Constitution on Wednesday, and then by December 12th, you will then complete this discussion board in which you are discussing the roles of national and state governments based upon your reading of the Constitution, telling me which level of government should be dominant, and give me evidence from the Constitution to support your opinion. So that's your first discussion board post. And again, as always, responding to 2 classmates as well. You'll see then Module 2 for the 13th. You've got your list of readings. Link here for the Anti-Federalist papers if you are interested in reading the Anti-Federalist papers. And there's another link to the Federalist Papers here for Federalist Paper 10 and Federalist Paper 39. And then your second discussion board posting, looking at the balance of power between governments based upon an issue. Oops. Module 3, political aspects, your readings, your discussion board posting. Fiscal federalism, readings, your discussion board posting. Administrative aspects, readings, your discussion board posting. Module 6, future readings and your discussion board posting. Then when you are submitting your assignments, your article critique gets submitted here, both of those, and then your discussion leader assignment. If you're going to use PowerPoint slides, you can go ahead and submit your PowerPoint slides here. If not, then you don't have to worry about submitting anything there. I will observe your discussion. I will take notes on your discussion, and I will just upload a grade for your discussion directly into the grade book. Then here are some of those additional readings: the governors in control, the fiscal federalism and economic crisis, state of American federalism. I have another state of American federalism article I'm going to throw on there as well, but that's one on there now. I'll have a second one sometime later today. Tax Cuts and Job Acts article, and the voting reform article. So those are additional articles you can select from, either to lead a discussion on or to use to write your critiques. Let me quickly just show you all of our discussions so you can see them all in advance. We already looked at number 1, which it went there anyway. Here's number 2, the balance of power between governments. And so for this one, you will, from your perspective, select one intergovernmental issue you're familiar with and answer the following questions. What are the roles and functions of different levels of government on this issue? What is the present balance of power between the different levels of government relative to the issue? How has the balance changed over time? And was the change influenced by politics? Okay. Let's take a look at number 3. You can see they're relatively general in nature, but I'm usually asking you to select an example and then use that example to frame your response. Number 3, we're looking at governments as lobbyists. This is our political aspect of federalism approach. When federalism questions are framed as political rather than constitutional ones, governments are placed in the position of lobbying Congress for their interests. Select one public interest group. I'm asking for a public interest group, and discuss how it has lobbied Congress lately. How successful has it been? One of the themes for this coming week will be a discussion of when the Supreme Court determines an issue to be constitutional versus political. At times, the Supreme Court has said that, yes, this is a constitutional issue, that yes, state and local governments, especially state governments, have constitutional protections from national overreach on this issue. When an issue is determined to be constitutional in nature, the Supreme Court is saying, come to the judiciary, and the judiciary will provide you with protection. In some other instances, the Supreme Court has said this issue is not constitutional, it's not covered by the Constitution, therefore it's political. And if the Supreme Court determines something to be a political issue, that means that state and local governments need to find a redress for their grievances through political avenues, meaning they need to go out there and lobby Congress just as any individual or just as any private interest group would have to lobby Congress. So it's important to know whether the Supreme Court considers something to be constitutional as opposed to being a political one. Because once it's political, that's when governments then become lobbyists. And so that is what discussion forum 3 covers that topic. Discussion board number 4. This is our fiscal federalism, the utility of intergovernmental grants as political tools. One of the themes of the class is the utility of intergovernmental grants as political tools in American intergovernmental relations. Select one intergovernmental grant you've experienced with and develop a posting in which you advocate changes to this grant to enhance the efficiency and or effectiveness. So I'm interested in seeing here is you selecting a grant that has intergovernmental components to it that involves multiple levels of government, and then identifying problems with that grant, and then ways of solving those problems, changes, ways in which you'd like to see that grant change in order to make it more efficient and more effective. And one of the things that you will notice throughout the class is even though we have these different modules, a political module, a fiscal module, an administrative module, they all bleed together, and that there are political reasons why we use grants. There are political aspects, the way in which we administer these programs and the way in which we collaborate and bargain and negotiate over the implementation of programs and policies. Speaking of negotiation and bargaining, that's the topic for your 5th discussion board. One of the interesting dimensions of our discussion is the recognition of negotiation and bargaining in intergovernmental relations for this week's Canvas posting. Please select one example of intergovernmental bargaining that you have participated in or are familiar with. Discuss this bargaining, including the issue at hand, the participants involved, and the outcome of the negotiation. This kind of is based upon the Robert Agranoff article in which he looks at different aspects of bargaining between different levels of government, provides us with some really interesting examples of how state and local governments have pushed back on the federal government and bargained with the federal government in order to get their way. And then the optional one, number 6, Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Issues of Homeland Security and Emergency Management factor prominently into our discussion on the proper roles of governments in the intergovernmental relations process.
please select one instance of Homeland Security or emergency management other than Katrina or September 11th, because those will be discussed in the articles and in class, and discuss the proper roles of each level of government in responding to the issue. So those are the discussion boards. Again, the sixth one is an optional one for you. And that is our Canvas site. So I just want to give you a quick little tour of the Canvas site and the resources there and how to navigate through them for the next 6 weeks together. And I think that's the entire course. We've done the syllabus. We've talked about signing up for an article to discuss, and we've talked about the Canvas site. I think that's all that I had on my agenda for this morning. So any questions at all about anything related to the course?
I have a quick follow-up question. For the articles, the article critique in the presentation, do they have to be different from the article you were presenting, like discussing with the class, or can you use the same one?
That is an excellent question, and that's a question I was kind of waiting for that question. That's a great question. For me, for this term, you can use the same article. So you can, if you want to, you're leading a discussion on an article and you want to write a critique on that same article, that's allowable. So that will save you a little bit of work. And I will allow that this term. In previous terms, I didn't, but I don't really see a whole lot of utility in doing that. So yes, you may use the same article for your discussion that you're writing your critique on. That's an excellent question. They'll save you a lot of time.
Thank you. That's great.
Anything else while you have me here? Okay, hopefully I'm getting to the end of my COVID, and hopefully my voice will be fully back by next week. I don't know, we will see. It's been since last Sunday and I'm still testing positive. So I'm hoping that I'll be over it next couple of days, but one way or another, we will certainly have class on Wednesday. And again, for Wednesday, please do review the Articles Confederation, take a look at the Constitution. I've got the slides on our Canvas site that we'll be using on Wednesday. First half of class on Wednesday, an introduction to federalism and intergovernmental relations for about an hour and a half or so. We'll take a break, and then we'll spend the second half of class going through the Constitution. Specifically, we'll go through all 7 articles and all 27 amendments, but we'll do it with an eye on what they mean for federalism and intergovernmental relations. And so we'll be really emphasizing and pulling out some of the discrepancies and some of the conflicts inherent in the Constitution in terms of the proper balance of power between levels of government. Because as we know, there are parts of the Constitution that tells us the national government is supreme. We've got a supremacy clause in Article 6. But then we have other parts of the Constitution, like 10th Amendment, the Reserve Powers Amendment, that says that all powers not given to the Congress nor prohibited to the states belong to the states and or the people. And so we've got differing statements in terms of national versus state sovereignty and superiority. And we'll really pull those conflicts out of our discussion then in the second half of class on Wednesday. So that's what we've got scheduled then coming up on December 6th. Send me an email, let me know what article you want to lead a discussion on, and I'll get those assignments done as quickly as possible, and then continue to update the spreadsheet then on our Canvas site. Any other questions you have between now and Wednesday, feel free to send me an email. I've got plenty of time to check my emails this weekend, so feel free to send me an email, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And then otherwise, then I will see you then at 6 o'clock on Wednesday for our first Zoom session. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Professor. Hope you feel better.
Weekend. Thank you. I hope so too. Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Feel better, Professor. Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
So I CC'd you on an email, and I emailed Matthew.
Okay.
I think what happened, it's totally my fault. I was super late on paying for the last class. And money's not an issue, but I've been working like 12 hours a day. I just never checked my email. So I paid for the last class on like Monday or Tuesday last week. So I think because of that, he just didn't add the cost for this current class, but I can pay for it on Monday.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll send him an email too, and then he'll just add you in, so it won't be a problem. It happens all the time. So
That's totally my fault. So yeah,
no
just
worries. Like I said, it happens all the time.
cool. But yeah, as soon as he puts the payment on Beachboard, I can pay for it.
Okay, cool. But I'll send him an
Cool.
email as well today.
And then real quick, so I live in like Huntington Beach, and I just got a new LA County job, so my commute's gonna be obviously super far. I start on Monday. I don't really know what my hours are gonna be. So for the discussion, is it gonna be like right away or like the latter half of class? Because I would have to do it in the latter half. Like I can be on the class, but it's gonna be on my phone as I'm driving home. Um, but when I
No,
get home at like 7-ish, I can do the
yeah.
um,
Yeah, we can always put you in the second half of class for your discussion. Yeah, that's not a problem. You just need to remind me of that, and then we'll just schedule you in the second half of class to make sure you're home.
okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure, no worries.
We'll chat. Thanks.
Take care.